What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my Game Week 14 team selection. So I'm going to run you through how the team is looking, talk about transfers, of which there could be a few different ones this week. There's a fair few issues to think about, especially when we've only got 3 game weeks left until the World Cup. We'll talk about captaincy, probably very briefly, although there's even maybe an issue with that as well. And of course, I'm going to run you through how I did in Game Week 13. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you are new around here. And let's jump into it. Let's talk about Game Week 13. If you want to know how I did, badly. Really badly. Only 40 points. We'll talk about captaincy in a second, but even disregarding that, I barely got points anywhere. 6 from Mitrovic, 8 from Danny Ward, and apart from Haaland, who, because I didn't captain him, I needed to blank, no one else got me anything. Gay, Cancelo, Trippier, Salah, Martinelli, Foden, Solanke, they all blanked. It was an absolutely terrible week, and it was kind of even worse because of the transfer I made. Now, you can't worry about these transfers, right? Because I was always going to make this, and really it's the least of my worries right now. But taking out Trossard, who scores against Man City when I've got Cancelo in my defence, is really frustrating when the player I bring in, Foden, who's had a rest, definitely going to play, hasn't missed a Premier League game all season, gets benched and comes on for a one-pointer. So that kind of summed up just how my game week went. And it was just bad. Even if I'd captained Haaland, I would have still got a red arrow, although it would have obviously been a little bit smaller than it was. And I am frustrated with the captaincy this week. Look, there's loads of times so far this season, as you know, where I've captained Salah over Haaland. I've been okay with the decision, but this week I really did want to go for Haaland. It was only, I kept saying in the deadline stream things like, you know, Haaland's going to be on 8 to 9 points to start with, so Salah's got to get at least a brace. And as soon as I'm saying things like that, that should tell me that I want to go for Haaland. I know that's the right decision to make. And I kept saying things like, you know, if Salah was at home to Nottingham Forest and Haaland was away to Brighton, then of course I would switch, but it's the other way around, so I'm going to go with Haaland. And I even messaged someone at 9:22 and said I'm probably not going to switch it, and then I switched it with 2 minutes to go, and it was super frustrating. And look, I still think, like, Salah blanking against Nottingham Forest, like, that's a little bit harsh for any of us that went for it, but they didn't play well at all. And I'm not sitting here saying that he deserved more points, because he definitely didn't. But obviously going into the game, we didn't know that's how they were going to play. And I think the idea of him blanking against Nottingham Forest, and he also blanked against Bournemouth not too long ago either. Well, it was a little bit long ago now. It's just all been a massive frustration. So I've probably got to captain Haaland going forward, of course, especially for the next 3 weeks. But he's obviously yellow flagged, so we'll come on to that in a minute. But Game Week 13, really bad. 40 points. I fell back outside the top 1 million. So it took me the last kind of 2 to 3 weeks to get up to a more respectable rank. And now suddenly I'm all the way down to 1 million again. So that's really frustrating. And I've said this before, but I really need a few good game weeks now before the World Cup. I don't want to go in to the World Cup break having come off the back of a really bad red arrow and being back out the top 1 million. So hopefully we can rectify that going forward. I've talked a lot about not panicking about my rank because the points are quite close together. And at one point, Danny Ward was on a 10-pointer until that 4th Leicester goal went in. He was on 10 points and Mitrovic was on 9 points at one point because of the bonus, right? And I checked my rank and it was about 100,000 places better off, and that's just 5 points. So I still think between like maybe 1 million and kind of 300, 200,000, something like that, the points are quite close together. But the more weeks I have like this, the idea of getting kind of top 100k, top 50k, top 10k, that is really slipping away. Top 10k is going to be really difficult now, almost probably impossible. But there are still a lot of weeks left. There's blank game weeks, double game weeks, free hits, triple captains. Who knows? Even though I've always done badly with a triple captain, I've still got faith. That's all that matters. So hopefully we can do better. Game week 13 was awful. Surely I cannot do any worse next week. There really is lots of things to think about this week. I've got a couple of yellow flags, which isn't ideal. There's other players that I've considered transferring out as well. So now it's a question of, can I still make those moves when I've got other yellow flags in my team? We're only 3 weeks away from the World Cup as well, so 3 game weeks left. So hits are becoming less and less viable because there's fewer weeks for them to work. And I've only got 1 free transfer. So the idea of kind of shifting funds about is very difficult without taking those hits, which I just don't think are that viable over the next 3 weeks. Obviously, if my team suddenly gets hit with loads of injuries and loads of suspensions and stuff like that, then maybe I will have to take a hit. But ideally, I don't want to do that. So let's start off with goalkeepers and defenders. So one of the transfers I've considered is Danny Ward out. Now, he's been an absolute legend for me. 4 clean sheets in 5 games. I think in 2 of them he got 8 points. The other one he got 9 points as well. One was 6 and then the other one was 1. So that 1 is kind of the anomaly for me, right? I know a lot of people have had kind of a worse time with him over the first few weeks, but for me he's been great. But the fixtures are about to get a lot harder, especially with Man City at home. Now the next 2, to be fair, after that, they're not really go out of your way to sell your goalkeeper type fixtures, right? Everton away and West Ham away. Would I be completely surprised if Leicester got 1 more clean sheet from the next 3? Possibly not, but with Man City at home, he is a transfer that I can consider. I would probably go to Pickford just for the fixtures. Everton's next 3 are pretty good, and I called this a passive move on stream. Like transferring a goalkeeper feels a bit passive, and someone made a comment that said something like, if it gets you more points, what's the problem? And I get that, right? I do expect Pickford to outscore Ward, which is why I'm considering it. But with goalkeepers, it's very rare that you'll get a massive swing in points over 2 to 3 game weeks. Like Pickford could keep 1 or 2 clean sheets, but if Danny Ward keeps 1 as well and gets a few save points in the other one, the gap in points is probably not going to be that big, and I feel like I can get more points doing a different transfer instead. So I'm probably going to have to hold Danny Ward and just hope that he can get a few save points against Man City, because I'm not expecting a clean sheet, as you might imagine. So he's probably going to stay. Trippier's staying, really good fixture. Look, annoying that Cancelo didn't get the kind of clean sheet against Brighton, but it is what it is. It's worth saying that he came off at half-time in the Champions League. I personally don't think there's going to be much of an issue there. I think Pep is just resting those players ahead of the 3 next Premier League games they've got. We will get another press conference from Pep before the weekend, because they are playing in the early kickoff, so we should get that on Friday. If he says anything about Cancelo, then maybe I'll think about transferring him out. But obviously, with Leicester away, Fulham at home, Brentford at home, I really want to keep my Man City players, even though I guess they've got to come up against, Vardy, Daka this week, and then Mitrovic the week after, and then Tony the week after that. I'm still going to hold Cancelo. And the same with Trent. And look, he has been frustrating. I brought him back for a hit. Nico Williams obviously did the business and got the clean sheet in the Brighton game, and then he didn't start against Nottingham Forest, which was really frustrating. But I knew there was a chance of that. My main hope with Trent is that was because he'd only just come back from injury. It was a Wednesday evening kickoff and then a Saturday really early afternoon kickoff. Klopp hates that turnaround. So I'm just hoping, because he was just back from injury, that's why they played Milner again. They are going to play in the Champions League tonight. I'm recording this on Wednesday morning. So if he plays another 90 minutes, I still think he probably plays in that Saturday evening game. I don't think Klopp can continue to bench him for Milner. Like, Milner's done well. He was brilliant against Man City. But in games where they're going to control more of the ball, they need someone like Trent there to make those creative passes. So I'm hoping he plays against Leeds. For what it's worth, I don't think Liverpool have got that much more defensively stable in this 4-4-2, and I'm not necessarily expecting clean sheets, and I would not be going out of my way to get Liverpool defenders right now, but he's already in my team, and I think I have to keep him for as a differential at this point, because we know what he can do. He hasn't done it so far this season, apart from against Bournemouth, but he's in my team. I don't think he's going to be the one worth using a transfer on. The only defender transfer I'm considering is Gay to Gabriel, because I got 0.9 million in the bank, so I can just about afford this. I do think Gabriel is the best Arsenal defender to bring in right now. He's cheaper than Saliba. I think he's better from set piece as well, more of a goal threat, and he's not on 4 yellow cards. You could look at Ben White as well. That is a move I'll consider too, but if I've got the money, I'll probably go to Gabriel, and if I bring him in, it would be to play a 4-4-2 instead of the formation I'm on right now, which is a 3-5-2. Solanke is yellow flagged. I don't know for sure if he's going to be out, but if he is, I haven't got much money to play around with that forward position. I would need to get cash out of another position. I don't really want to take a hit, so I could see myself benching Solanke, even if he's out until after the World Cup. I might just bench him for the next 3 game weeks. It's all going to depend. We'll see how things go in the press conference, but that's how I'm feeling right now. Leave the goalkeeper and defenders as they are, and just really hope that Trent gets me something and Ward can get a few saves. So looking at the midfield, if I do bring in Gabriel, it would probably be to bench Andreas Pereira, and I just don't know if I need to go out of my way to do that. I do think in isolation, just for this week, Gabriel is better than Andreas Pereira, right? Because I think there's a really good chance of a clean sheet, and he is pretty decent from set pieces as well. But obviously that would use up one of my free transfers, which means I can't make one of the other moves that I'm considering, which I'll come on to in a minute. And it also gives me no opportunity to possibly roll into next week. And one of the reasons I'm considering that is that Trent Alexander-Arnold has Spurs away. So unless I see something almost special from the Leeds game where they can defend and he is going to get forward and potentially get me some attacking returns, he might actually be sellable in game week 15, even though he's got Spurs in game week, Southampton at home in game week 16, because I could downgrade him to a cheaper defender, possibly someone from West Ham, maybe like Zuma, and then use that money to upgrade Solanke just for the last couple of weeks if he's out injured. So that's something that I'm considering. But ultimately, I think my squad is pretty good this week in the fact that Andreas Pereira plays Everton at home, Gay's got Southampton at home, and don't get me wrong, I've had no points from Andreas when I've played him, and Gay is also having no points when I've had to play him too, but I think they're okay fixtures this week. So right now I'm playing that 3-5-2, as well as kind of the other yellow flags and press conferences and stuff like that for Cancelo. I need to wait and hear about Solanke before I do anything, because if he's going to be fit, and if he's only going to miss Spurs, for example, he does have Leeds away and Everton at home, so I will probably just keep him for those fixtures. But I need to wait and see what's said. Elsewhere, we'll come on to... Well, let's do Salah now, right? A lot of people still think that I should sell him. And obviously, if I'd sold him weeks ago, maybe I'd be in a better position right now. I wouldn't have had that temptation to captain him. And like I said, I do think Haaland was the better captain last week. It was my mistake for switching it and whatever. But in isolation, if we forget about Haaland for just a second, right, if that's possible to do, I think that Salah this week against Leeds at home is better than Salah against Nottingham Forest away was last week. And that's another reason why I'm a little bit annoyed about switching the captaincy, because now I feel like I can't consider anyone apart from Haaland. Whereas if I'd gone for Haaland last week, I probably would be considering Salah for the armband. Now, I would need to know that Thiago was fit and Trent was definitely going to play, but I think at Anfield that is a different proposition than playing away from home. And I'm not convinced that Leeds can defend like Nottingham Forest did. And I think Liverpool will get plenty of chances. And I know Salah hasn't necessarily shown a huge amount recently. Okay, the game against Rangers, hat-trick, but that was Rangers. The goal against Man City, but obviously they gave him a lot of space and they played a little bit on the counter. But I just... forget about cancelling for a second. I cannot sell Salah before Leeds at home. That's even if I wanted to get Saka in, that's saying that Salah is a worse option than Zaha, and I'm just not quite sure I'm there yet. And I know that people will say, well, what about the money? You can use that elsewhere. But unless I take a hit, I can't make use of that money this week anyway. So I don't think it's worth using a transfer on Salah to Saka or Salah to anyone else, really. I mean, if I was going to do it, I would keep Salah this week and switch to Kevin De Bruyne next week when Salah has Spurs away, and then maybe even look to switch back or just hold De Bruyne for that last game week in game week 16 and make a different move. But I just can't do it this week. Even if I don't captain him, I still want him for Leeds at home, because that is a home fixture against a team that always concedes goals. So as bad as Liverpool might have been, and we'll see who gets minutes in the Champions League and stuff like that, I'm just not going to be able to sell him. There's only 3 weeks left now, and like I said, unless I start taking hits, there's just not many opportunities to switch these funds around in my team. I've made the mistakes already, and it's too late to kind of rectify them. So I've just got to hope that players like Trent and Salah can be a bit differential for me over the next few weeks. So I'm probably going to hold on to him. Foden I've got to keep. I think people are now falling into the trap that, you know, he played in the Champions League, but he came off before 90 minutes. Therefore, he's definitely going to start against Leicester. For what it's worth, I do expect him to start, but that's not necessarily how Pep kind of works. But Foden has started pretty much, well, literally every game, I think, apart from the last one. So I'm sure he'll be fine. No intention to sell him. No intention to sell Martinelli either against Nottingham Forest at home. I will keep an eye on who plays for Arsenal in the midweek fixture, obviously in Europe as well. And then it comes on to Zaha. So a lot of you are probably thinking about the same transfer that I am, which is Zaha to Saka. I do think that Saka is probably the better option from now until game week 16, but I don't know just how much better he is, because Zaha still gets to play Nottingham Forest. He's got a pretty good fixture this week as well, and obviously it uses up a transfer. So for me, it's a question of, do I do Zaha to Saka and just ignore the other yellow flags in my team and just use my bench, which is absolutely a fine decision. I could do that for sure. and just go for Saka and just hope that he absolutely smashes Zaha, not only this week, but up until game week 16? Or do I give Zaha a little bit more of a chance for Southampton at home, Forest away in game week 16, hope he gets something against West Ham away in game week 15, and just hold that transfer? So it's mostly a case of, and this is if Solanke's only injured for 1 week and Haaland's okay and stuff like that, it's really a case of, do I want Saka in, or do I want the 2 to 3 transfers next week to kind of play around with this team? And I guess the problem is, if I hold the transfer until next week, and then I decide that actually I don't really want to get rid of Trent or Salah because of that Southampton at home fixture, because they've done so well against Leeds, then what is my move going to be? I'm sure there's always going to be something I can do with 2 free transfers, right? It's always a bit more interesting when you've got that flexibility. But if I've not got a pre-planned move with only kind of 2-3 game weeks to go after that, then maybe I should just do the Zaha to Saka move. So for anyone thinking about it, if you've got nothing else wrong with your team, I do think that's a pretty good move. Try and wait until doing it after they play in Europe, because obviously if Saka plays and gets injured or something like that, that would be a nightmare. But I'm in 2 minds about it, just because of everything else going on in my team. I wonder if Gay to Gabriel just hold Zaha and just have him against Nottingham Forest at home could be a better option. I feel like if we get through this week without Saka smashing Zaha, I feel okay, because then Arsenal have got Chelsea away. Who else is it? I can't remember what it is now. Let me go back to this screen. Chelsea away, it's Wolves away, isn't it? Yeah, Chelsea away and Wolves away. And I just think that Zaha possibly against West Ham away and Nottingham Forest away can do just as good, if not slightly better. So it all comes down to game week 14 for me. And that's why do I just close my eyes, not make the move and hope? That's where I'm at right now. I may just do Zaha to Saka in the end. Let me know down below if you're making that move. Do not panic. I repeat, do not panic, but Haaland has been yellow flagged. Could he miss out in game week 14? I'm definitely captaining Salah now, no doubt about it. I've got to switch the arm back. No, of course that's not the case. I'm sure Haaland will be fine, but he did get substituted at half-time in the Champions League last night. So did Cancelo. And this is what Pep Guardiola had to say. This is from Fantasy Football Scout. So 3 things, and this is why he got taken off. I saw him so tired. The second one, he had a little bit of influenza in his body, like João. João played with a fever. So apparently both João Cancelo and Haaland played with a fever. That's probably why he was tired, to be fair. Even a robot, you know, absolute machine like Haaland still suffers from the flu like the rest of us. The third, he had a knock in his feet. That is why he was not able to play in the second half. So he has put some doubts on it. It is worth saying it wasn't quite like this. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he also kind of made it out like Haaland hadn't recovered before the Copenhagen game. That's why he missed out. For me, that was just so he was definitely rested for the Liverpool game. This is maybe a little bit different because they had to play against Dortmund, and maybe there is something in it, but I'm sure he's still going to be fine for the weekend. The good news is, if we just come onto the FPL screen for a second, the Man City game is the early kickoff. Now, we don't tend to get as much early team news for Man City as we do for someone like Liverpool, for example. But because it is the early game, it is possible we'll find something out there, because it's the 12:30 kickoff on Saturday, which, as most of you always remind me, we shouldn't be back in anyway. So I assume most of you have changed your armband off Haaland as it is. But for those of you that do want to keep it on him, hopefully we'll get some team news. If we don't, it's all going to rely on what Pep Guardiola says in his press conference, which should happen on Friday. I've got a feeling that he's not going to say that he's absolutely fine. He's probably going to still say that he's maybe tired or something like that. But I'm sure he's going to play, so I'll probably captain him. My hope would be that he'll either definitely play or he'll completely miss out and not just be on the bench. If we get early team news that he is on the bench, I will actually, like, all jokes aside, just switch the captaincy armband to Salah, because I do think he is the next best option in my team despite everything that's happened. But because of all the pain over the last few weeks and the points that I've lost out on, I do just want to go for Haaland, go into the weekend knowing that any of my other players get points. They're all somewhat of a differential. Not obviously all to different degrees, right? Some are still quite highly owned, but none of them are going to be as bad as when Haaland gets points and you're not captaining him. So that's the thing there. I'm sure he's going to be fine. Let's wait and see what happens on Friday. I'll obviously do final thoughts there as well, just in case anything is said to put more doubts in our mind. But unless he's ruled out until after the World Cup, I will not be selling him. I think if he was going to miss this week, I probably would just do the Gay to Gabriel move, bench Haaland and just play 4-5-1. That would be my move. With Mitrovic, I'm sure he's going to be fine. Everton at home, perfectly good fixture to keep him for. I am possibly considering selling him next week, depending on everything else that happens with the team before them. just to get off that. I don't think, like, if you want to keep Mitrovic from now into the World Cup, you absolutely can. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But if we get to next week and I've got a spare transfer, I look at Mitrovic with Man City away and Man United at home. That is not necessarily ideal fixtures, although obviously he's nailed on penalties and all that stuff. I've still got slight doubts because he's carrying that knock in his foot that he got in the international break. But he is one of those players that will just keep playing. The player that I've considered is Scamacca. Because I don't necessarily want him this week. He could score against Man United away. It's not the easiest fixture. Being 15 and 16, it's 2 home games against Palace at home and Leicester at home. I don't really have the cash to go up for a kind of a Calvert-Lewin punt. So Scamacca is probably where I would go. His minutes are pretty good at the moment. 65, 79, then 86, 90, and then 73 against Bournemouth. So pretty nice. It'd be better if he was all the way up to 90, but it's decent. The other thing is, Bowen has probably lost penalties at this point. I know he said it, but he sounded like he was kind of joking, but I think he probably will lose them. Moyes tends to do that. You miss, you're off. Benrahma did take one, but as we know with Benrahma, he doesn't necessarily always get minutes. He played 90 against Bournemouth, but before that, he's not really been in the team that much. So I think there's a chance that Scamacca will get penalties when he's on the pitch, or at least get a chance. If he misses, then someone else will probably get them, but there is a chance that Scamacca gets them. So Mitrovic definitely staying this week, but possibly next week I could look to get rid of him. So as things stand, this is the team, and I'm tempted to make no transfers, but Zaha to Saka is definitely calling me because I really want him for that Nottingham Forest game. Realistically, I wish I'd just done Saka last week. I could roll the transfer this week and just get Foden in game week 15, but it's too late to worry about that. The moves have been made. Maybe I just hope that Zaha can get me something and not troll us all again. If you enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new around here, and I'll catch you again tomorrow.